very interesting that they've chosen to do an open source LLM.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm very pro open sourcing.
I think it's cool. Meta did something similar, and I think we've seen that from a couple of big kind of tech players.
Open sourcing certain systems allows you to have more control long term, like Android, for example.
That's probably the future, because I do believe the future is open source.
I truly thought it was brilliant.
But I think we need to be very cautious of opening up a two-tier society where only certain people have access. This should be about empowering everyone, and the open source community is a way to do that. I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm very pro open sourcing and the open source community. I think companies have been doing an amazing job of optimizing stuff that's on the open source community and repackaging it and making it very user friendly and doing additional development of it. But I think we need to be very cautious of opening up a two-tier society where only certain people have access to AI, LLMs, AI video generation, AI image generation, because this should be about empowering everyone. And the open source community is a way to do that, is a way to make sure that it can be provided at low cost to the masses. So I think what Microsoft is doing great. I think what Meta's doing is great. I think what Black Forest is doing is amazing with their Flux model. So yeah, I think the open source ensures that everyone could be part of this change rather than just a select few. So I'm very positive about Microsoft open sourcing their LLMs, and I hope a lot of other companies take take a note from their book, really, and whether it's more inefficient or they make their previous models open source. I mean, I think that's a great idea. So obviously, if you want to keep your cutting edge one, profit making, and then as that falls behind, let that open source to people. But yeah, I want to see as many people having access to this technology as possible.
Regarding Microsoft and open source, I think that's probably the future, because I do believe the future is open source. It's very difficult in AI world to hide something. AI will find it. That's AI by itself, right? And that's the reason I think they realize they have to have it open source. That's at least my personal opinion. But on the other side, there are benefits of having open source. That means you're gonna get upgrades for free. You're gonna have people using, debugging for you. And there are a lot of opportunities to give something for free. And let's go back in time with Microsoft. Do you know why Microsoft is actually in any computer? Because in 1995, actually, they made the whole thing for free. So everybody who have a PC, they use Microsoft. So therefore, every agency right now is using Microsoft. Unfortunately for Apple, only the artists are using the Apples. But if they made it free at the time on Apple, maybe we'll use Apple's instead of Microsoft. But you still have Unix, which very few people are using, but it's free.
Yeah. I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, for the sole reason that they're like partnering with OpenAI so far, right? So it's very interesting that they've chosen to do an open source LLM, and I think this is actually aligning with a lot of the work that Microsoft is doing right now. So, for example, I actually went to the GitHub Universe conference.
I saw on LinkedIn just a moment ago, actually. Yeah, just for the call.
Oh yeah,
10 years at GitHub, I think it is.
What was that?
I think it's 10th year of GitHub.
Yeah, I think something like that. Yeah. And one thing that was really interesting is inside Copilot, right? They're going to bring, or they have already brought, like other models besides just OpenAI, right? And I think that's an interesting move by Microsoft, but it's because they realize that some of these models are better at certain tasks than other ones. And they're adopting like, okay, we got to just choose the models that work best for the given thing, not just stick with OpenAI. And I think this open source model that they've released is like exactly like an extension of that.
True innovation touches the soul and sparks change.
Creativity has no bounds when powered by AI.
Step into greatness and shape tomorrow.
Enter the Best of AI Video 2024 competition.
And show the world the depth of your imagination.
I think it's cool. Meta did something similar, and I think we've seen that from a couple of big kind of tech players, right? Not sure if they have some type of ulterior motive or what the plan is, or if they just want to give the world a good technology. I mean, I don't know, but they're for-profit businesses, so they obviously have some type of plan. I mean, which they should have.
I heard that. Sorry to interrupt. I heard that open sourcing certain systems allows you to have more control long term, like Android, for example. You know, it's been very helpful for Samsung, I'm sure. A bit of Google as well. So I wonder if Microsoft are taking the same route because they don't have a moat. They don't have any protection against open source models anymore, and maybe Meta's thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's been very, contrasting to Apple's kind of locked system. You don't tamper with it. You can't kind of approach. So yeah, it's interesting. And I think the more open source tools we have, the better for the kind of AI community and the world too, because I mean, then you can build on those and do things. So
I think it helps with the PC market and the Macs. So like Mac was always closed. You can never install, RAM sometimes. And PCs were just completely different. And maybe that's why they became more popular than the Mac, with Mac, on its way up. But
I mean, it could be, and I mean, maybe we're facing another shift right now. I mean, Mac has always been the default for everything from creative industries, advertising, any creative work, art direction, all that stuff is Mac. Entire industry is just Mac. But now with the whole thing, I mean, this is a slightly different topic, but like how Apple, as far as I know, could be, but I don't know, have not really made any strides at all to adopt, I mean, AI on a hardware basic, because it's all optimized for PC and CUDA and, basically NVIDIA. That's why the NVIDIA stock has skyrocketed, right? Because it's all PC optimized.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think chip manufacturers, including Apple, I think they are putting AI acceleration as... can't think what's...
I mean, I read exactly. The new Mac Mini and the new iPhones will have like AI chips in them, which is good. Well, that's cool. But like what I'm thinking about is specifically like working with open source, where I mean, really, really powerful graphics card and stuff that is just like, RTX 4090 and some of 5090 that's coming soon. And if Apple is just going to lag behind there, and because a lot of creatives is going to have to, like me, I'm going to have both. I'm going to walk between the world, both having Mac and PC. So
I truly thought it was brilliant. I actually didn't really see it coming to various degrees. I know they're giving in many ways, but they also want to keep their ecosystem tight knit. And so the reason why I thought it was brilliant is because now we have multiple players that are in Meta, they're like, radically stability AI that are giving a lot of Hugging Face, giving a lot of really valuable information to the general public so they can actually understand what's happening and why it's happening.
I think that open sourcing is quite a curious thing when it comes to business models and current forms of trade and making money, really. I think in principle, it's a great idea. I'm not entirely sure how it slots in with a capitalistic world, and it seems to be possible because it's being funded by VC when it comes to Hugging Face and things like that. Are there any other open source things that are thriving which have not been like funded with deep pockets? I'm not entirely sure. I think Wikipedia is probably an interesting parallel because it's also something that happens out of the goodness of people's hearts in some way. But you're seeing banners on it all the time now, so people can donate. I'm not entirely sure that open sourcing is sustainable unless we kind of change the way that we have our economic setup, which I'd be very happy to see, by the way. But like, in a sense, when you have like Meta releasing Llama, I think I am. For all my sins, I was in like the audience at SIGGRAPH whilst Mark Zuckerberg was.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, you were, weren't you? Yeah, we were in America at the same time, and I was like, "Oh, can I go to that?" But it wasn't anywhere near where I was. So
yeah. Down in Denver, Colorado. I didn't realize that we basically ended up being locked in a room for like 6 hours watching Jensen Huang wax lyrical first and then like inviting his best bud.
I was watching it live actually. I was watching those two talk and have a laugh. Zuckerberg and Jensen. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. do you remember what you were saying about kind of open source? Because he was talking about how Facebook basically had to create an ecosystem, and why React was created as a framework, and now loads of people use React, right? And it's like, well, in order to get people utilizing Facebook, maybe, or getting them to get used to like its interface and all the rest of it, it had to create it as an ecosystem, and in its development of something, React was created, and so then they were like, okay, cool, more developers can use it now, and then that ecosystem is kind of built. And I think for them, therefore, it made sense maybe to have Llama as an open source thing. Going back to your question about Microsoft, yeah, they don't really work that way. So yeah, it does sound a little bit left field. Probably Google's going to start doing things like that as well. They also don't really work that way. So
yeah.
Apple's another one, isn't it? Because they're going to be integrating LLMs, which is quite interesting because they haven't developed it, and they're notorious for closed systems because it's about quality of a certain kind, style of a certain kind, which is a little bit different from like open source, which is actually a collective, collective sync of different people's ideas, and somehow getting to some sort of equilibrium. You've had like millions of people kind of giving input into something like that. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be quite interesting if that's where software goes in general. It's also notoriously hard to like patent, isn't it? So loads of people in innovation and investing, but where is that part going to go? And that also kind of links into things like copyright, and we were talking about earlier, and IP when it comes to like brands or like passing off or like literally other people's work, that kind of thing, or derivatives. I think the whole thought piece needs to kind of come in for this, and it's all kind of linked in.
And so Copilot is technically a piggybacker on top of AI that existing platforms. So it's basically like ChatGPT comes in from the backside. This is the guts of the whole system, and they create a prompting structure that sits on top of that called Copilot.
Yeah, I've been using that actually. Yeah,
it's sort of like Visual Basic. The notion of how it allows you to create additional training and whatever on top of Excel or whatever Microsoft tool that they might have. So it's one of those interesting things. I don't know how that's going to come into market, what that's going to do with the market, because you got people who Microsoft is actually struggling with getting people to pay for the Copilot because they don't understand its value. Like, if you don't understand this thing, why pay an extra $15 to $20 a month to integrate it? So Microsoft has come on the backside and they started offering free training for Copilot to justify the reason for having it.
Have they? How did you get onto that?
Yeah. It was a post recently, I think it was in Wired magazine. They were talking about they're going to start doing some free Copilot training through their system. And again, it's because they're wrestling with people don't want to pay that premium price for a functionality they don't understand. Again, it's sort of like Photoshop. If you know the different tools that you're used to using and you've been using for the past 10, 15 years, when they throw 5 more tools on there and they say, pay us for these extra 5 tools, most of us would be like, I don't see the value. So I'm good with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So if Adobe would have come along and said, okay, we've created Firefly 3 and it's going to cost you an extra $5 a month, maybe a few people would have done it, but most probably would have avoided.
So I hope you liked listening to those experts. You can watch this show on YouTube and get it on your TV at home in 1920 by 1080. Ooh. And you can also like our LinkedIn page, which is AImode, and that's on the screen right now. Should be some QR codes that you can scan. All right, until next time, guys, I shall see you soon. Bye.